Awesome, thank you. And we would like to begin by respectfully acknowledging that Mass Poetry in Salem, Massachusetts are on the ancestral territory of the Wampanoag, Nipmuc, Massachusetts, Nomkig, and Agawam. Many other Indigenous communities have lived and moved through this land over hundreds of years, and many Indigenous people work hard and live in these regions today. Let's take a moment to honor these ancestral grounds that we are collectively gathered upon and support the resilience and strength that all Indigenous people have shown worldwide. Thank you. We at Mass Poetry are intentional about ensuring that events are accessible to everyone attending and involved in the festival. We have closed captions available for this event. If you can't see them, you can turn them on by clicking the live transcript button at the bottom of your Zoom screen and then show subtitles. If you would like to turn them off, you can choose hide subtitles. For anyone who is depending on auto captions today, to ensure that chat messages are not popping up over the captioning, click on chat at the bottom of the screen and it will open a chat panel to the right. If you experience any trouble with this or any other logistics, please send a private message to myself or Jacqueline. Regarding Zoom etiquette, please keep yourself muted unless you are invited to unmute by the speakers. There are many ways to interact with each other via the chat and the Zoom reactions button, so please feel free to use them as a way to engage. Please be kind and respectful to the event producers and your fellow participants. We will remove participants for discriminatory or harassing comments, and in such cases, participants may be banned from further festival participation. Thank you for your patience, and we hope that you enjoy the event.
I'm Ken Waldman, and I'm the moderator, facilitator. I'm a writer with 19 books, including Sports Page. And this is Sports Page. This is the pandemic edition. I'm a longtime Alaska resident, and I think I'm supposed to mention that I got a green shirt on. I'm sitting down, but I'm a tall guy with a white beard, and I'm in here from Eureka Springs, Arkansas today. And I am joined by Professor of English and Creative Writing at Lock Haven University, Marjorie Maddox. She's published 11 collections of poetry with 2 forthcoming. She has a story collection, What She Was Saying, 4 children's and YA young adult books. Also Commonwealth, contemporary poets on Pennsylvania, and she was an assistant editor with Presence, a journal of Catholic poetry. I'm also joined by J.D. Scrimgeour, who teaches at Salem State. He's written extensively about sports, especially baseball and basketball. His books include Festival, Lifting the Turtle, The Last Miles, Territories, all poetry and in nonfiction, Themes for English B, and a basketball memoir, Spin Moves. And though I'm here today from Eureka Springs, Arkansas, and a longtime Alaska resident, I grew up outside Philadelphia, and I had 5 summers where I taught tennis in Milton, Massachusetts. So since we're at Mass Poetry, I was at a camp in the late 70s called Offense Defense Tennis Camp. It was at Curry College on the campus. And I'm going to share a poem from that time in my life that's, I had it right here and I'm going to find it again. It's called Tennis Without a Net. Courts finally empty, everyone gone. We removed a net, Joey and I, and began cracking ground strokes like clockwork. This rallying the sum accumulation of the millions of balls we'd hit growing up. Balls hit indoors and outdoors. Balls hit on clay, wood, cement, grass. Balls hit moving in, sliding, backpedaling, wrong-footed. Balls hit as dinks, chips, half volleys, lobs. Balls hit wide, long, on the rise, over the fence, against a wall. mishit balls, yellow balls, white balls, orange balls, spotted balls, dead balls, balls hit right-handed, left-handed, two-handed, between the legs, over the shoulder, falling down, diving, on one knee, on two knees, cramping, bloated, drunk, exhausted. Balls hit in Kalamazoo, Miami, Chicago, New York, Boston, Atlanta. Balls hit with John McEnroe, with old men, with girls. Balls hit in drizzle and downpour, in anger and spite. Balls hit warming up for 0-0 wins in third set tiebreaker chokes. Balls hit because we love to, Joey and I, especially then, twilight, the summer evening, dawdling toward dusk. Couple of lanky tennis tan 20-year-olds who taught lessons all day, thought to undo a net. Who knew when the backhands began? Backhand after cross-court backhand, soft floating underspin backhands, each unerring shot arcing higher above the imaginary net, deep corner to deep corner, sky darkening, our shoulders turned, wrists laid back, long, smooth follow-throughs extending, neither moving nor seeing, hitting purely by ear, Joey and I. Even after that last perfect ball disappeared in the unlit July night. Tennis Without a Net, sports page. There's 7 sections in this book. I have a set of Alaska sports poems. I have an opening set. I have a set of familial poems. I have a set of, there's a final set, but there's also a set of baseball poems. And this is, I guess, New England and Boston Red Sox, or Boston Red Sox fans, and also to Marjorie's on deck. So since Marjorie's on deck and she'll talk more about where she lives in her life, this feels like an appropriate way to get going to Marjorie. It's called the Baseball Hall of Fame. Cooperstown honors Jimmy Fox. I honor odd memories. Swept pitcher's mound and batter's box. Swept pitcher's mound and batter's box between innings. A crafty Greg Maddox working out of a jam against the Phillies. Cooperstown honors Jimmy Fox. I honor the Bill Lee Red Sox, the Jamie Moyer Mariners, Doc Ellis on LSD, swept pitcher's mound and batter's box, Giants and A's, Cubs and White Sox, Jackie Robinson winning a World Series. Cooperstown honors Jimmy Fox, Babe Ruth, Joe DiMaggio, Ted Williams, Bobby Cox. I honor Louis Tiant, Dick Allen, Tommy Agee, every pitcher's mound and batter's box. Chris Short holding Maury Wills or Lou Brock on first. Jim Cott versus Carl Yastrzemski. Cooperstown honors Jimmy Fox. I honor swept pitcher's mound and batter's box. And for those keeping score, that's a villanelle. And Marjorie, I introduced you, but you might want to say a few words for yourself as you take it from here.
Thank you. That was great. I'm going to share some visuals, and you're mentioning Greg Maddox reminded me that once my father introduced my brother as Greg Maddox, but his name is Rick. So that's just a family story that kind of goes around. But I am primarily connected to baseball through family and through place. And my great-grand-uncle was Branch Rickey, who helped break the color barrier by signing Jackie Robinson to the Major League Baseball in 1947. So here I am, the little girl in red. And you can see Branch Rickey and his wife, and then different family members. And I've been fortunate enough to read twice at Cooperstown at the Baseball Hall of Fame. The second time I got to meet Branch Rickey III. So that was really a joy, and introduce him to my husband and to my 2 kids. But the first time I went was in 1997. My daughter was just a couple months old, and it was the 50th anniversary of the breaking of the color barrier in baseball, and Rachel Robinson was there. So it was like a real thrill for me to meet one of my heroes and to talk with her. And then later on, I worked on a series of vignettes about Rachel Robinson's life before and going and continue on after she knew Jackie Robinson. So I'm just going to read the very last one of those, but you can kind of see it starts when she's very young. And then here's the last one. Rachel now. Now is the time to stop reading this story. Look instead at the young women. They are in the factories and the schools, in the grocery stores and the law offices. They are checking your pulse at the hospital. They are measuring the strength in your heart and hands. They know what is possible. And watch the men, follow them too. They are crossing the busy streets. They are running the lonely marathons. They are walking the shadow-clad alleys. They are climbing the sharp cliffs. There I am, and over there and here too. Listen to what I am saying through them. Keep moving all the way to home. And I live in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, Little League capital of the world. And so of course, how could I not write about baseball? So I'm just gonna read two very brief Little League poems. The Little League World Series, first play. Teams crowd the hills, fill in the land along the river, uniform like patches of colorful cows amidst the fields. All the corn points to the ballpark. The small towns downtown leaning in for the anthem. It's time to begin. The countries and counties in parents' faces shuffle in the stands. A TV camera shifts to a close-up. At the plate, a child half the height of a tractor breathes in his heroes, exhales the length of a state. In the nervous grip of a 12-year-old, planting, youth, harvest, old age. And some of you may remember in 2014, Monet Davis kind of took the Little League by storm. Her team didn't win, but she was really the focus of attention and pitching a perfect game. And I would overhear these kids arguing about that they wanted to be Monet Davis, little boys arguing that they wanted to be Monet Davis, throwing like a girl. 70 miles Monet style, fastball, curveball, flashing into the future ball, every which way but losing. Batters up, so we chant, Monet, Monet. Awake, sleeping, warming up for the life worth stealing in this home run of a series we call team, we call you go girl. Braided phenom with an arm that hurls hope way past today's whirl of photo ops and change-ups, all the way to a close-up of two T-ball boys playing the part, debating, voices escalating, I'm Monet, no, I'm Monet. And a summer of daughters leaning into the pitch that blasts, the picture is in the way, I can't see the word, that blasts the phrase, throwing like a girl into the all-star compliment that it can be, that it is. When lean machine Monet takes the mound, smiles as wide as a long drive, then delivers the dream we braided girls of baseball, basketball, soccer, business, science, writing, still need in whatever and every season. And I'll stop there.
JD, you're going to be up next.
Great. Batting third. What an honor. And fourth.
Yeah,
So
and
I guess
cleanup.
I'm going to read for about 10 minutes and then we'll work our way backwards. Thanks everybody for coming, and Ken, thanks for bringing us together. This first piece, if people are interested in places to find good sports writing, literary writing, one place is this magazine, Sport Literate, and I'm going to read a piece that appeared in that magazine called Today, Late April. It actually is the final paragraph of a collection of short stories that I wrote, but it also can pose as a kind of prose poem. Today, late April, the sun out after a morning of rain, A few drying puddles, some damp dead leaves, winter's leftovers in the gutters, scattered twigs like arthritic worms on the sidewalks, the leavings of last night's wind. And I'm walking the 2 blocks from the university to Forest River Park, past the houses of my son's childhood friends, past the rented houses crammed with students, downhill to the park's entrance, the Little League field, fluorescent green in the sun soaked afternoon, the Atlantic barely visible down the drive that follows the outfield fence and curves into the rest of the park, chips of white flashing in its slate. And I step past the untended gatehouse where some teen in a bright t shirt will check cars for resident stickers once summer spreads itself across the year and the outdoor pool opens in the park's far corner. And out in front of me on the diamond, a tall Latino man in a bright red t shirt and red cap pitching to his other son chasing the balls down in the outfield. And as I watch the sun running through the outfield toward the chain link fence, the wave of all those years spent with my 2 sons on baseball diamonds breaks through me, nearly toppling me, a weight not of memories, no swirling collage of moments, but feeling, ineffable and thick as the muddy batter's box, that only here, setting the moment down in words, am I able to fasten to actual bits of past. How there would be afternoons when I would get lost, wondering whether my son would hit a ball hard that evening. How there would be days when I'd hit ground ball, ground ball, ground ball to my eldest, while my youngest, worn out or bored, would climb a tree and read a book. How my arm would hurl pitches until it hung exhausted, some instrument that was less a part of my body than a marvelous aged machine whose workings I would never understand. And if the world was timeless, like a poem, I would have sat on the small, unbalanced aluminum bleachers and watched the fathers and sons, studying the boys' swings, assessing the father's accuracy, letting the breeze billow my unzipped windbreaker as I let all that once was have a shaky second life in my cells. A ball might have even, in a moment of triumph for the boy and the father, cleared the fence, a home run. And I jumped from my seat, a twinge in the knees, and jogged to it, slowing to a walk as I approached it lying there in the rut made by some long gone car, a dirt stained ball beside glistening grass, and bend, the ball fitting my hand with the beautiful solidity of a fact. And I brush off a nub of mud and turn toward the field. They are all looking at me, and cock my arm and flick the ball back over the fence to the glove of the brother, a boy whose name I will never know. When I was younger, I actually had promised myself I would never write about baseball and fathers and sons, but I broke that promise. It's such a cliche, right? But I met when I was in graduate school in at Indiana University. Uh, a number of us who were in the MFA program and in the English PhD program had a weekly basketball game, and I made good friends with someone who was in that game, uh, Mary T. Lane, a wonderful writer who isn't with us anymore. I'm going to read an old poem from my first poetry book, The Last Miles, when Mary was with us. It's called The Weekly Game for Mary T. Lane. sun slants through the far doors, filters through the leaky roof, shows dusty fuzz on the hardwood. On the first court, blacks and whites argue a traveling call. Everywhere, the squeak and shout, piled coats and sweats. An unused ball, name blacked across it in black marker. The attendant stamps hands from her stool. The line forms at the drinking fountain. You won't tell them it's your last game for a while. That chemo starts Wednesday. A cry of pain, an ice pack, a man limps off, fills out an accident report. How did it happen? How old are you? Is there a witness? The 16 courts stretch for blocks, the largest mixer you've ever seen. The ball's percussion says it's time to play, to shoot, to run. And you flash your ID, join the group loosening up. Elena rubbing her shoulder, Casuto kicking his heels as he shoots. You toss your gym bag down, start changing your shoes, and already your hands begin to sweat, anticipating that first dribble, the ball coming back to your palm, truer than a yo-yo, truer than the sun. And in this instant, the morning reverses itself, but without fear, simply Saturday. The walkover, mid-March air, buds bobbing on 3rd Street like a hesitation move. Marks rap on your door. Are you ready? And before that, cereal, paper, pigeons coos from the eaves as you wake into your ordinary life. Rereading that, I'm reminded that I think one of the reasons that poem ended up the way it did was that Mary and her husband had moved into the apartment that we'd had, my wife and I had the year before, and so I was able to imagine her setting off for the basketball court because that's almost exactly what I did in the mornings. And then I'll read a new poem. Mary used to swim with my wife, the woman who became my wife, in Bloomington. And so this poem, it connects to sports in that it's about swimming. Swimming's a sport, right? Graceland. That first year in Bloomington, she and Mary were swimming to Graceland, a game they played to make the daily laps mean something, 1 or 2 miles a day. How far did they get? No one remembers now. She's raised 2 boys, and Mary died a decade ago. I tried to swim, but it was even worse than running. It was running underwater in a narrow lane, others bearing down on me, passing too close. And after, my head always saturated, nose dripping, ears useless. Ah, love. She still swims, and as her body finds its way from shore to shore, she thinks of Mary, their walk across the twilit campus, refreshed and spent. That time the frat boys yelled, "Get bikes," and Mary startled her, shouting, "Fuck you." Later, she'd realized they'd said, "You dykes." We knew the world was broken then. We just thought we could fix it. Now, in bed on nights she's swum, I smell the pool on her, astringent, clean. And it's as if we never left Bloomington. The world's grime less than rumor. She's almost an infant drifting off beside me, and I'm almost infant too. Flesh on flesh for comfort, for the walk into sleep. She must have reached Memphis by now. Thanks.
Wow, I'm loving hearing these poems in both of your voices, Ken and JD. Thank you. Those are really powerful poems. I'm gonna kind of pick up where I left off a little bit. And when my husband and I first moved to Williamsport, we lived in a duplex, and the duplex overlooked a ball field. And so I would sit out in the backyard and write baseball poems. And it eventually turned into this book, Rules of the Game Baseball Poems, which you can see from the table of contents. Take all the terminology, the jargon of baseball, and then kind of rewrite a poetic definition. So I'm going to read a few of those poems. The illustrator is John Sanford, not the novelist, but the illustrator out of Chicago. And I love the way that Boyd's Mills Press, when this first came out, kind of made the poems part of the action. Balk. It's a poker face turn on to turn, stretch back, twist enough to make them guess which way to shift, push off the calves, clip toward base. Nobody thinks you're lying till slip slap on the wrist, that arm shoots up. One more obscenity amidst the crowd's limp moans. And then the slow tick of men clicking around to the 12, to the 3, to the 12 or 9 or 6 o'clock plate as you wait for the moment to end, the possible out ousted or the other score more. You cringe, cower, back up into your crank up, once again, let it soar. And I'm a college professor, but I also spend some time going into elementary schools and doing different exercises. I have one, like Ken does, I have one exercise or set, whatever you would call it, on writing poetry that moves. So part of that is writing poems about baseball, but I take in hula hoops and tennis rackets and all kinds of things. And it's a good way also to teach onomatopoeia, alliteration, assonance, and consonants. So here's one poem that has a lot of those sound words. Choking up on the bat. High on the handle hurries the wood toward its whack, but Jack, a quick crack, loses the stronger smack that attacks the ball, creates a neck-turning trek past the mound on the ground, thwack, like that. A strike, by any other name, is a sometimes foul, is a swing that swats only air, is doing nothing when the ball's right there. 3 times is an out, is an out, is an out. Home run. Anything less is a slice. Hungry, you want the whole pie. With the ball out of sight past the wall, you crave every last crumb of the run as you trot with arms held high from plate to plate to plate, all the way back to home, your fans deliciously happy, stuffed full of satisfaction, unable to ask for one bite more of such scrumptious summer joy. And one of the reasons I liked writing these series of poems is you don't really have a blank page or a blank screen anymore, right? It's already started. And there's always kind of more terms to define. The line drive. Fast, straight, head high, a sharp swing of invisible string on which the ball careens to a surprise shortstop. Or a limbo line of speed stretched taut between the batter's clack and the fielder's background of green. The short distance in this baseball universe between right here and way out there. And then this is the last one in the book. And I was very brave and asked John Sanford, whom I've never met in person, if he would include my kids. So the little boy in the center, my kids are grown now, but it was my son. And then I think the 2 girls on the outside were both kind of modeled off of action photographs of my daughter. This is on the poetry app too. Grand Slam. Dreams brimming over, childhood stretched out in legs. This is the moment replayed on winter days when frost covers the field, when age steals away wishes, glorious sleep that seeps back there to the glory of our baseball days. And since I live in Williamsport, I was actually chosen to be the official Little League World Series author 2 years, and we got passes into the bleachers. And one of the perks was that they put my book up on the scoreboard for like 15 minutes. So that was that'll never happen again, but that was a lot of fun. Okay, and I'll stop there.
Just makes me smile, Marjorie, and just want to make sure that if the people who are here attending, there's a chat function if you want to put something on with questions, or in my case, I have this book where I have lots of different sports. So if there's a request on a different sport, I might have a poem for it. I do have a couple of, talking about JD, I do have a couple swimming poems in here, but I'm not going to read one now. I'm going to follow with what, I wasn't going to read this one, or maybe was going to read it, but with Marjorie doing the baseball poems and with Albert Pujols being in the news, being released by the Angels, whether he's going to be found playing later this year for another team, I have a poem that there's a reference to Albert Pujols. So it's called Imaginary St. Louisan. And it's also with Marjorie, this is a family poem too. My father, Albert, was called Archie or Arch. My father, baseball-loving, football-following Philadelphian, a businessman who should have lived in St. Louis. Instead, an imaginary St. Louisan, an imaginary giant Cardinal fan, who when he answered to Arch, could have spent his last years as a switch hitter, one day mimicking Musial, the next day Pujols, swinging an imaginary bat, hitting an imaginary ball, pointing happily east at his imaginary blast, Arch, where the imaginary St. Louisan might have found his further fence before crossing that river home. So that's with you all. And I'm looking football poems, and that's so nice because I do have a football poem I was going to read anyway. This book was so funny. I'd had, I don't have it with me right here, but I had a chapbook. This book came out in 2020. This sports page, and I had a bunch of sports poems I had written back in the 1990s. I had a chapbook called Sports Page, and I had accumulated more poems. And when I found a publisher, which was Lamar University Literary Press, that took this book, poetry collections are usually between about 50 and 70 pages long. And mine was about 65, 70 pages. And they said, we want it to be between 90 and 100. And I'm thinking, okay, I have a possibility. I got to write some poems quick. And I put together a whole section of dream poems. And one of them, I may share a couple football poems, but this is one football poem that actually includes baseball and basketball, but it's a football poem. It's called Colin Kaepernick's Dream. Martin Luther King Day parade, I'm in front with Tommy Smith, John Carlos, Muhammad Ali, Arthur Ashe, Kurt Flood, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Jackie Robinson, LeBron James, Satchel Paige, Connie Hawkins, Marlon Briscoe, Joe Gilliam, Doug Williams, Warren Moon. Behind us, hundreds of brothers and sisters of all sizes, shapes, and shades. Thousands, no millions. We fill every road into and out of Washington, D.C. We kneel and pray. And I'm going to do two more quick ones. And then I'm glad. Thank you for the chat. Football poems. I got a basketball poem. Do not worry. I got them all, or almost all. And here I have a section of sonnets. I like writing in forms. And Marjorie made up her own forms with these terms that are just full of sound. I love those. And this is kind of a a lot of sound with this. I was a visiting writer at Texas A&M, and a couple of years, I guess a year or two before, Johnny Mizell, had gotten the Heisman Trophy. So he was everywhere on that campus. So doing this event, I was a resident, then I did a big show with a bunch of other companies. I actually did this to dancers. So people, the Texas A&M dancing students danced to this poem, Johnny Football. You make the stadium all electric, wicked big play freak of a quarterback, sneaky scrambler, pass happy maniac, shotgun trickster, quick huddle, snap, a slick fake to fullback, quick downfield look, a quick flick to wide out in the flat, or else back a few steps, the pocket. You have that knack to make tacklers miss, to precisely pick apart a weak defense. Johnny Football, campus hero, freshman Heisman winner, one part regular Kerrville Joe who's all yes sir and yes ma'am, one part steak dinner and a hip new nightclub with wine and girls, one part Aggie set to hotwire the world. So that's that. Let's see, a basketball. I don't think I have a terza rima. I'll do a basketball poem though. Let me see. I think I got one that's another sonnet. Okay, I wasn't even going to share this one, but it came up. So I'll do this, and then questions we got. We may have me, JD, and Marjorie all together, just discussing like current events. I think you have another round to go, Marjorie, with this. But I'll do this one basketball poem. The dreamer steps out into the world. So much easier in an empty gym to bounce the ball 3 times, barely aim, swish, one free throw, the next and the next. You wish you could save these shots, pack them in a slim suitcase, get fouled, take them out, shoot, no rim, clean, calmly ice games by sinking the pair, swish, swish, Mr. 93%. You wish you could bottle it, this touch, this feel, trim everything extraneous, no ball, no foul line, no basket, no court, no free throw, no history, just the perfect present, the world naturally messy, silent, talky. You walk light as air, your own king, queen, country, acting, reacting, breathing. As the dreamer steps out into the world. So that's 2 rounds. Got some sports. We got Marjorie coming up. We got Ken again. We got JD. If there's any, thank you for the chat. Thank you, internet connection that has been working with my fingers crossed here in rural Arkansas. And Marjorie, I think you're up again.
Okay, thank you. It's just great to hear all of these. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about writing about poems, and sorry, all I have is baseball. It's just all baseball, but poems in the pandemic. And when Little League World Series season comes around, the town just completely transforms itself. Parades and pins to share and trade, and of course the games. And I felt so badly for these kids. Of course, there wasn't anything else that could be done but to cancel the series last year. But you felt so sorry for these kids who had worked so hard. Canceled. The boy, the girl, the bat abandoned, not just like that, but left no less with less in his own country, her own county, the state of all now no state at all for the winning. The cry to play ball, dying too fast to call foul, so far out of bounds of all we imagined remotely possible on these scrubbed streets, meant not for pandemics, but parades, collectible pins, curbside toddlers catching candy, even nostalgic seniors tipping their ball caps for favorite flags and destinations, while uniformed 12-year-olds, momentarily gloveless, practice waving back, not quite believing they've won the right to arrive in this small town of heroes and dreams. Except this year, now sidelined, no cut altogether from the team. There's nothing more to say, no instant replay. The deserted streets and stadiums will fill again, but not with their smiles. You can't postpone 13. And I'm just wondering, you can hear me, right? I unmuted myself. Okay, I got a little afraid halfway through. And then of course, just Major League Baseball and all the minor teams with nobody in the stands. Take me out to the ball game, summer 2020. The stands now emptied of them. There's nothing really here. No bellows, no pantomime blows, even jeers and middle fingers, a missed memory. But worse, only the weight of breath rounding the bases, dust not thick enough to hide absence. Only exaggerated taunts of uniformed rivals, half-hearted really, fizzling into sighs. Spitting, high fives, celebratory tackles, all foul of what's acceptable. The dugout a den of masks and dread. Each hot, dry night, the heave of the team pushes through innings where hip hips once slipped into overwhelming hurrahs, sweet Carolines no longer curling lips into ba, ba, ba to be tagged out. Would be better than this, erasure of safe, would be touch, would be before, would be being again outside the single gaze of the camera. And then I'm just going to end with another short poem from the Rules of the Game book, Safe, because we've had to really redefine what that means now, right? Safe, a whole other ballpark, swoosh of yes past the ear, scoreboard clicking wishes against odds, and old men holding out for the opposite. What could be hunkers down here, dares to snare the numbers, spike out the sure thing, outlaw the out. All this dust delivers the done died for and dreamed of, the sweet whoosh of feet pounding the safety of base. I was thinking I do have one basketball thing, which I'm not going to read, but JD and I are actually in the same anthology by Todd Davis. Yes. Yay. Good segue there.
Seems like we have a lot of segues. One of my thoughts too is I want to thank Crystal Valentine, thank all the people with Mass Poetry, thank Kevin here and the volunteers, is that me, Marjorie, and JD get to do this in person sometime. Wouldn't that be really a good thing? That's it's true. And another segue, I'm thinking I always get myself in trouble in various ways. Oh, one thing I want to mention too, JD had mentioned sport literate. Marjorie, JD, and I have also all published in a journal, Aethlon, which is the Journal of Sport Literature. And I got things in all sorts of sports, but one thing I didn't get in there, but it's a new project of the last 4 years. Once again, it's going to get me in trouble. I have written these Donald Trump poems, Trump sonnets. This is volume 7, volume 6, volume 5, volume 4, volume 3, volume 2, volume 1. I started writing the day after the 2016 election. I'm still writing them. And I got some sports poems. I'm going to read. Marjorie said she was doing sports in the pandemic. This is volume 5, his early virus monologues. And it's in Donald Trump's voice. And a sport that we haven't mentioned yet is golf, and Donald Trump's a golfer. But I also want to mention my father. I have a bunch of sports poems in the sports page about golf, and bringing it back to New England, my father also played college football at Tufts. So there's all these connections that make me so happy to be here. But I'm going to read this one. The book has funny titles. All the poems I've written by now, it's over 600 sonnets about Donald Trump. And this book was all titled by number. So this is Trump Sonnets number 354. Saturday night, I dreamed my favorite golfer, Jack Nicklaus, had died from Kung flu. I saw his younger, smiling face and knew he was gone. I tried to make sense of it, but he kept grinning broadly, wouldn't quit his staring. The golden bear. We'd been true friends over the years, the best. Our wives, too. Now it seemed he wanted me to commit to something. I started whispering low how he won more than Arnie and Gary and built many special courses, though mine were nicer. He looked so very sad that moment, and I promised him, Jack, we'll cure the virus and reduce taxes. I got that, and I'm going to share, go back to baseball. This is another Donald Trump poem. This is pandemic. This pandemic edition. Marjorie opened up that door, and I'm just going to go right through it. So Trump Sonnets number 364, and a number of these are dream poems in this, and the dream poems lent themselves to sport. Saturday night, I dreamed I'm on the mound, Yankee Stadium. I'm in uniform. Perfect spring day, not too cool or warm. There's no catcher, no batter, not a sound. No one in the stands. I'm looking around, no umpires either. From far out, a storm growing, funnel-shaped clouds. I heard car horns, or were they sirens? And someone announced the game was over. I fingered the ball, my glove a fine tan color. The darkness was closing in, spinning wind. Standing tall on the mound, I threw a curve, the likeness of young Whitey Ford. Donald Trump versus world. Then I'm upside down in swirling dust. I'm going to read one last poem. These are the Trump Sonnets. You can go trumpsonnets.com or kenwaldman.com. Marjorie, what's your website?
It's www.marjoriemaddox.com. I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, and I'm kenwaldman.com and trumpsonnets.com. I'm going to read the last poem in sports page. It's I started out with tennis. I got a ping pong poem. I don't know if there were other questions there or other sports, but this is a short one. It's called Natural History, and this never was in a journal until it was published in this book. But I've always been so enamored with this poem. I guess some of us, we like our poems. This is called Natural History. They're playing ping pong. Satan and God. Sun and moon belong to God, of course, then to Satan, then to God, to Satan, to God, as do the grasses, the creatures, the sports. And you and I, we're crammed tight inside the spinning white ball that gets whacked, 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 faster and faster. The master's master. Thank you all. And JD, you're, as the hometown hero, you're going to clean up, and then we'll see if there's other questions or anything from the people in chat or anybody else.
Great. Thanks. It's just been great. Thanks, Marjorie and Ken. Wonderful poems that will stay with me. I actually am going to, since someone mentioned basketball poems, I'm going to read a little basketball prose from this book, Fast Break to Line Break. I'll read the beginning of the introduction that I wrote with Todd Davis. I don't know whose words these actually are, mine or Todd's, but I'll read that, and then I'll read a little bit from my essay that's at the end of the book. In December 1891, just 3 months before the death of Walt Whitman, Dr. James Naismith nailed 2 peach baskets to the wall of the gymnasium at the YMCA International Training School in Springfield, Massachusetts. Taking up the challenge of his department chair to create some indoor recreation for the winter months, Naismith considered the formal rules of American sport and improvised. He built his game out of the materials at hand, a pastiche of conventions garnered from sports as diverse as rugby and lacrosse, and punctuated with the discarded soccer ball and the peach baskets that the janitor found in a storeroom. Whitman doubtless would have been pleased with Naismith's game, born of necessity and joy, requiring ego and egolessness. A game with patterns that can feel elemental, yet distinguished by improbable improvisations, full of the energy of the city and the stillness, ever taken a foul shot, of the prairie, an American game. Indeed, one might imagine Whitman's spirit transferring from his body into this new game and the bodies that play it, their moves graceful as grasses in the wind, stunning as sunlight flashing off the East River. And then I'll end with a little anecdote from my essay at the end of this book called Announcing My Retirement. I know a lot of you were wondering when I would hang up my high tops. When I was in Indiana, I was part of a group of English graduate students who played basketball every Saturday morning. Some winters, one of us would take the initiative to sign us up for the graduate school's intramural league, playing against competitive future lawyers, doctors, and MBAs. We usually managed somehow to hold our own. One close game we won in overtime against a team from the law school. And as we walked past them after it was over, I heard their coach, they were competitive enough to have a coach, berate their players. You know who you guys just lost to? He snarled. You just lost to a bunch of poets. That's it. Thanks. I guess we have a few minutes for questions or whatever.
Yeah. Any questions from anybody out there, or do we have any questions, Marjorie, JD, for each other?
I have a quick question. I just wondered how you got to know Todd Davis with JD.
Oh, Todd contacted me after he'd read my themes for English B and wrote a nice note to me. We were originally going to co-edit this book, but then I didn't do any work for it. So he went forward kind of on his own, but we sort of stayed in touch and
yeah, wonderful poet
yeah.
too.
A good writer. I'd recommend him for folks.
Anybody writing sports poems or watching sports on TV or following? What are you following right now with beginning of baseball season, with the NBA playoffs approaching, and there seems like there's always something going on?
I'll say that I haven't been watching much sports, but over this past year, I kind of got hooked on the Celtics again. It was just something to look forward to in the evenings. I wish they were doing a little better this year, but they're fun to watch.
Yeah, I was going to say, JD, I've been dying with the Celtics.
Oh, I know.
So, but there's always next year.
Yeah, Kevin and I better not get started just analyzing the Celtics here. We don't want to do that, but we've done that on our own.
Yeah, I've been kind of taken over by teaching by Zoom this year, so I haven't been watching much either. My husband, however, is a huge Red Sox fan. He's also an English professor at a different college, and his office is decorated like Fenway Park. He was so excited when he found Fenway green paint. So that's just a little anecdote for me.
I grew up outside Philadelphia, but my sister is long married and is living in Boston, where her and her husband can walk to Fenway Park. And, you know, they occasionally, when there are games that they can go to, they occasionally go to the games at Fenway. And they are Red Sox fans and Celtics fans and Patriots fans and on and on. And I've been, after not following for years, the last several years, like my childhood, I've gotten back into following tennis, which I had not done after I played actually level national junior tennis. And then I played a little bit of college, I taught, and then I started writing and I picked up the fiddle. But the last several years, I haven't played really at all, but I watch and I kind of go, God, I could have been somebody sometime, is what it feels like. So I've gotten into that again.
This is not related to that, but I wanted to be sure to mention it before we say goodbye, which is that in the document that I put in the chat, at the end of it, there are 2 links to writing by Mary Lane. And one of them, I would recommend if you're interested in sports writing at all. It's quite old. It was written right after 9/11, but it was published in the Washington Post about her family had bought her a game of horse with Shamik Holdsclaw, who was a star of the WNBA at the time. And Mary had been sort of suffering through cancer and keep going into remission and coming back. And it's a beautiful little essay. And the other essay I mentioned that was published in the Georgia Review was wonderful too. So if you do nothing else after this, I hope you'll read those pieces by her. Thanks.
Yeah, and I should mention too that tonight I'm on the periphery of the poetry world, periphery of a lot of things, but one of my longtime supporters and somebody who I just think is wonderful, Naomi Shihab Nye, is reading tonight, and she's somebody that I've been corresponding with. Actually, she's a fan of the Trump sonnet stuff. So I saw her about a year ago at AWP in San Antonio, right before things closed up, and we've corresponded the past year. So I thank the festival. I thank JD and Marjorie, and thank you all for attending and for
Ken.
being involved in the chat too.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah.
I think we, yeah.
Oops, sorry.
Go for it, Sarah.
I believe we have some closing remarks. Are there any last questions or anything for the presenters today? All right, I guess I will begin. So thank you all so much. Poets, I think you already have, but if you have a website, socials, or a link to a book, chat book, please put them in the chat box now so that people can follow up with you. Can we just get a round of appreciation for our poets as well today? Wonderful, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Nice job.
Don't forget to support the poets directly by following them and buying their books. There's plenty more amazing programs happening this weekend. If you're interested in attending more events, check out our website. You can also visit the virtual small press fair, listen to the Improbably audio tour, visit the gallery, and more. Please follow Mass Poetry on our social media accounts and sign up for our newsletter if you haven't already. And the links will be listed in the chat as well. I believe I already listed them up above, but I can put them again. Any donations go to support not just the festival, but year-round poetry programming. Thank you so much for coming to the event, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Ken, for pulling this together.
Welcome.
And I just posted all of the links as well again. So thank you all so much. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun. Thank you, everybody.
Yes, I loved everybody's work. So
And I'm so thrilled that Ken's Wi-Fi worked, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, it worked.
Last Friday night, I was on a Zoom reading in Washington, D.C., and I cut out for the last half hour, and I was once again with the Ethernet, but this worked, but I don't know how or why, but let's just be thankful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it worked fine.
Yeah, good.
Yep.
Good.